he went quiet. Not cold, not distant, not the kind of quiet that makes you feel invisible, just still. And you didn't know what to do with it. Because silence after intimacy is one of the most confusing things a woman can experience. Every instinct you have wants to fill it, to ask if he's okay, to check if you did something wrong, to interpret it, decode it, fix it. Because silence feels like absence, and absence feels like rejection. But here's what most people never realize. For certain men, in certain moments, silence is not withdrawal. Silence is surrender. It is what happens when a man has felt something so real, so unexpectedly deep, that his words simply cannot get there fast enough. The problem is, nobody taught you the difference between the silence that means he's gone and the silence that means he's arrived. If you've ever lain in that quiet, wondering whether his stillness meant he was disconnecting, or whether it meant something far more profound, this video is going to change the way you read those moments forever. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what his quiet behavior after intimacy is really communicating, and you will never mistake his attachment for indifference again. Let's talk about what's actually happening in those moments for you. You've been trying so hard to be the kind of woman who doesn't need reassurance, who doesn't overthink, who can just be in a moment without analyzing it to pieces. And maybe you've gotten pretty good at it on the surface. But inside, that silence lands like a question you're afraid to ask out loud. Does he actually feel something? Or was this just physical? And the cruel thing is that the very act of not asking, of lying there quietly, performing your own calm while your mind races, means you leave that moment without an answer. You go home, or he goes home, and you're left assembling a case from fragments. The way he held you, the way he didn't, what he said, what he didn't say. You've probably been told that men just are like this, that they emotionally disconnect after intimacy, that it's just how they're wired, that it doesn't mean anything. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes the silence really is just biological reset, a need for space, nothing personal. But sometimes, and this is what nobody tells you, that quiet is the most attached he has ever been to you. Sometimes that stillness is a man processing the realization that what he feels for you is bigger than he expected. That you have done something to him he did not fully prepare for. And the difference between those two kinds of silence, it's in the behavior that lives inside the quiet. The small things he does or doesn't do while he's still there but saying nothing. That is what we're going to break down today. 7 behaviors that live inside a man's silence after intimacy, and what they reveal about just how deeply he is attached to you. Let's go. Start with the most fundamental signal, not the most dramatic, the most foundational. When a man gets quiet after being deeply intimate with someone, there are 2 versions of that quiet. In one version, he drifts toward distraction. His phone, the TV, a reason to get up and do something. His body is in the room, but his mind has already left. He's filling the silence from the outside. In the other version, He stays in the silence. He doesn't reach for anything. He doesn't manufacture noise. He is just there, fully, physically, undistractedly present with you, even without words. Here's why that matters so much. In the world we live in right now, choosing presence over a screen is an act of will. Every device you own is engineered to capture your attention the moment you're not actively engaged. The pull toward that distraction is constant and strong. The only thing powerful enough to override it is a feeling. When a man lies quietly next to you, phone untouched, eyes open or closed, just breathing in the same space as you, he is choosing you over every other option available to him. Not dramatically, not with a speech, just with the quiet, stubborn fact of his presence. That choice, repeated in those still minutes, is one of the most honest things he will ever tell you. A woman named Claire told me she'd spent months convinced that a man she was seeing wasn't serious about her. He was reserved. He didn't say a lot after they were together. But she noticed something. He never picked up his phone. Ever. She said, we'd lie there for sometimes 20, 30 minutes, just quiet, and he'd just be there. Eyes open, or sometimes he'd close them, but his hand would always find me somewhere. And his phone would just sit there like it didn't exist. She said, I kept waiting for him to reach for it, and he never did. And one day I realized that was him telling me something. She was right. They've been together 3 years. His phone never moved. Neither did his feelings. In a world designed to pull his attention away from you, the fact that he doesn't let it, that is not nothing. That is everything. But here's where it gets interesting. The body does not lie, even when the mouth says nothing. There is a well-documented principle in human behavior. We orient our bodies toward the things that matter to us, toward the people we want to be near, away from things we're indifferent to or want to escape. We do this instinctively, constantly, without awareness. So in those quiet moments after intimacy, pay attention not to what he says, but to what his body is doing. Is he curled toward you, knee touching yours, arm resting near you, face angled in your direction? Or is he squared away, back to you, physically retreated into his own separate space? Now, this isn't about whether he's cuddling you in a full embrace. Some people, men and women both, need a little physical space to decompress after emotional intensity. That's not a red flag. But even someone who needs space can stay oriented. He can give himself room without giving you his back. He can decompress without physically exiting. The man who keeps his body tilted toward you, even in silence, even while his eyes are closed, is telling you something with every inch of that orientation. I am still with you. I have not gone anywhere. You are still the center of my gravity right now. And that gravitational pull, that is attachment. Pure, unspoken, undeniable. Mia had been with someone for about 2 months when she started noticing something. She said, he barely talked afterward, which used to make me nervous. But then I started noticing he'd always be facing me. Even if I moved, he'd sort of adjust, like he was tracking me without realizing it. She said one time I got up to get water and came back, and he'd rolled to face the side of the bed where I'd been. He was asleep or close to it, And I thought, he followed me even in his sleep. She laughed when she told me that, but there were tears in her eyes too, because she understood in that moment what his body had been telling her for weeks. You don't need him to say he's attached. Watch where his body points when he thinks no one's paying attention. That's the truth. Now, this next one might genuinely surprise you. This is the one that's hardest to describe, but every woman who has experienced it will know exactly what I mean. There are two kinds of silence. Empty silence, where a person is just switched off, vacant, not really anywhere, and weighted silence, where a person is so full of something that they can't speak yet, where the quiet around them has a texture to it, a presence. When a man lies next to you after intimacy and goes quiet in the weighted way, when you can almost feel the thinking happening inside him, when there's a stillness that feels full rather than hollow, that is a man being overtaken by feeling. And here's what that feeling often is. It's not contentment. It's not just physical satisfaction. It's something more unsettling and more profound than either of those things. It's the sudden, destabilizing recognition that this person matters to me more than I expected, more than I was ready for. Men are not taught to handle that recognition gracefully. They're taught to pursue, to perform, to provide. They're not given a script for the moment when someone quietly dismantles their emotional defenses just by being. So when it happens, they go quiet. Not because they've checked out, but because they need a moment to absorb something they didn't see coming. That silence is not disconnection. It is the sound of recalibration. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas was 38, divorced. He'd spent 4 years since his marriage ended being what he called very intentionally unattached. He went on dates, he enjoyed company, but he was meticulous about keeping things light, keeping his heart in his own pocket. Then he met a woman named Ava. He told me, the first time we were really together, I went so quiet afterward. She noticed. I could tell she was unsure what it meant. But what was happening was, I was realizing that the thing I'd been very carefully protecting myself from had just happened without my permission. He said, I didn't know how to tell her that without terrifying both of us. So I just stayed. I just lay there in that quiet and I let myself feel it. And I didn't reach for the phone. I didn't make a joke. I just let it be real. He was quiet for a moment after he told me that. Then he said, Ava told me later that was the moment she knew I was serious. Not anything I said, the quality of the quiet. Think about that. The quality of the quiet. Not his words, not his grand gestures, the texture of his silence in a moment when he didn't know she was reading it. How do you recognize weighted silence? You feel it, honestly. It's the quiet where he hasn't gone anywhere, where the energy between you feels charged even without contact, where his breathing is deliberate, where the absence of words feels like it's holding something back, not like it's empty. Trust that feeling. Your nervous system is picking up on something real. When his silence feels full rather than hollow, when you can almost hear him thinking, What you're hearing is a man coming to terms with how much he cares about you. And if that one resonated, this next sign is going to hit close to home. This distinction is everything. And once you understand it, you will never confuse the two kinds of touch again. There is touch that wants something, that is building towards something, signaling something, seeking a response. We all know what that touch feels like. There's an agenda in it, even a tender one. And then there is touch that simply is. A hand resting on your arm with no particular destination. A thumb moving in a slow, absent circle. Fingers in your hair that aren't arranging it, just in it. Touch that is not asking for anything, not building to anything, not performing anything. Touch that exists purely because his body wants to maintain contact with yours. That second kind of touch, in the quiet, after the urgency has passed, is one of the most reliable indicators of emotional attachment that exists. Because here's the truth. Physical desire is motivating when it's active. But the moment it quiets, a man who is only physically invested will naturally create distance. His body no longer has a reason to reach for you. The man who keeps reaching, gently, absently, without agenda, is operating from a completely different place. That touch isn't driven by desire. It's driven by bond, by the simple, profound need to remain connected to someone who has become important to you. It's the same impulse that makes you hold a child's hand when they're already asleep, not because they need it, because you need it, because the contact itself is the thing. Diane described the pattern she noticed with the man she eventually married. She said, after we'd be together, he'd get very quiet, barely said a word, but he'd always be touching me somehow. Not romantically, just his hand on my back or his foot against my ankle, something small and constant. She said, one night I asked him about it. I said, do you even realize you do that? And he looked genuinely surprised. He said, do what? He didn't know. He wasn't doing it consciously. That is the point. That touch was not a decision. It was an expression of something that had bypassed his thinking mind entirely and gone straight to his hands. The touch that has no agenda is the most honest touch there is. It's his nervous system telling you what his words haven't found yet. This one might sound small. Bear with me, because it isn't. There is a very specific sound a human being makes when they feel genuinely safe. When they are in a place or with a person where they can stop performing, where they can let the accumulated tension of existing in the world, the striving, the presenting, the managing, just go. It's a sigh, a long, slow exhale. The kind that seems to come from somewhere deep in the chest. The kind that is not sad or frustrated or tired in a depleted way. The kind that sounds like relief. When a man lets out that kind of sigh next to you in the quiet after intimacy, what you are hearing is his body releasing the armor it carries everywhere. Most men spend their days in some form of performance. At work, socially, even in casual interactions, there is a version of themselves they maintain. Competent, in control, unflappable. That maintenance takes energy, more energy than they often realize. But with you, in that quiet, if the sigh happens, it means that maintenance has stopped. That you are, for him, the exception. The place where he doesn't have to hold anything up. That sigh is trust. That sigh is, I can be a person here. And not everyone gets to hear it. A client of mine, Serena, told me about a moment that shifted everything for her. She'd been wondering for weeks whether the man she was seeing was actually emotionally available or just going through the motions. Then, one night, in the quiet, she heard it. This long, slow breath, she said, and his whole body just relaxed, like he'd been holding something for a long time and finally put it down. She paused. And I thought, oh, I'm a safe place for him. I didn't know I was that until that moment. She didn't ask him about it. She didn't need to. She just put her hand on his chest and felt his heartbeat slow. Some things don't need words. When his body exhales next to yours like it's been waiting to, you are not just someone he desires. You are somewhere he feels safe. And that is rarer and more valuable than attraction alone. Here is a particular moment that happens sometimes in that waited quiet, and it is one of the most powerful things you can witness. The silence stretches. Minutes pass. And then he says something. But it's not small talk. It's not, that was amazing, or a comment about the room. It's something real. Something that sounds like it came from a place he doesn't usually open. A fear. A hope. A memory he hasn't shared with many people. It comes out almost like he didn't plan it, because he didn't. The intimacy of the moment, the lowered defenses, the safety of the quiet, it created a door, and through that door came something true. This is not the same as a man performing vulnerability to seem more attractive. That has a particular quality to it. It's a little too smooth, a little too well timed, a little too aware of its own effect. What I'm describing is different. It's rougher, more uncertain. He might say it and then go quiet again, like he surprised himself. Watch for the confession that sounds like it cost him something. The admission that's slightly too honest. The thing that comes out in the dark that he might not have said in daylight. Those words are the inside of him. And he only let you hear them because you have become a place where the inside of him feels like it can breathe. Karen told me about the night she fell in love with her partner, though she didn't know that's what was happening at the time. They'd been together and then quiet, maybe 15 minutes of silence. And then, without any particular lead-in, he said, I haven't felt like I deserved something good in a really long time. I wanted you to know that. She said, he wasn't looking at me when he said it. He was looking at the ceiling. And then he went quiet again, like he was embarrassed. She didn't make a big thing of it. She just turned and put her head on his shoulder. But she told me, that sentence, I've never forgotten it. Because I knew in that moment that I was seeing him. The real him. Not the one he showed everyone else. When the silence breaks with something that costs him. When the realness slips out before he can stop it. You are not just someone he's with. You are someone he trusts with the parts he normally keeps hidden. One more, and this is the one that ties everything together. This last sign is the quiet culmination of everything we've discussed. After the silence stretches, after the bodies and the breathing and the small touches and the weighted quiet, at some point, words come back. And what a man does in that transition tells you everything about what the silence meant. The man who was never really attached uses the arrival of normal conversation as his exit ramp. He starts talking, and with the talking comes energy, and with the energy comes movement. He's up, he's looking for his things. The conversation is the soundtrack to him leaving. But the man who has been sitting in that silence because he was feeling something, when his words come back, he doesn't go anywhere. He gets more comfortable. He asks you something. He picks up a thread from earlier in the night. He makes a cup of tea and brings you one. He settles back in. The return of words for him is not the beginning of departure. It's the beginning of the next chapter of the evening, because he has no desire to be anywhere else. This is the final confirmation, not the silence alone, but what happens on the other side of it. Because anyone can be temporarily quiet, but the man who stays in the silence and in the conversation that follows is the man who has made his choice about where he wants to be. And where he wants to be is with you. Felicity had a simple way of putting it. She dated a string of men who, in her words, couldn't get out of there fast enough once the night was over. And she'd started to believe that's just how it was. Then she described the first night with the man she's now engaged to. She said, "He went quiet for a while, which I was already bracing for. And then he just started talking about nothing, about a documentary he'd watched, about something his nephew said. And I realized he's not going. He's not building to a goodbye. He's just continuing." She smiled. "We were up until 3 a.m. just talking about everything, about nothing." She said, "That was the night I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. The good kind. The good kind of trouble. That feeling you get when someone changes the landscape of your life simply by refusing to leave it. The man who fills the silence by staying, not by leaving, is the man whose quiet was never about absence. It was about arrival. 7 signs, 7 behaviors that live inside the silence of a man who is more attached than he's letting on. Let me bring them back to you quickly. He stays present without his phone. His body stays turned toward yours. His silence has weight. You can feel him thinking in it. He touches you with no agenda and no destination. He exhales the way people only exhale when they're safe. He lets something real slip through in the quiet. And when the words return, he stays. Now I need you to notice something about all of these signs. None of them are loud. None of them are grand. None of them require him to write you a letter or give you a speech or sit across a table and declare his feelings. They are small. They are quiet. They are easy to miss, especially if you've been trained by past disappointments to only trust the big, obvious things. But here's what I want you to understand. The quiet signals are often truer than the loud ones. A man can be trained to say the right things. He can perform romance when he senses it's expected. But he cannot manufacture the quality of his silence. He cannot fake the direction his body tilts when he's at rest.